Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Elliott Homestead. Today we're in the dining room in a bit of a mess because we have some work to do. I was going through my calendar yesterday and I realized that we only have one more week left of January, which means I really need to get the ball rolling on this year's garden. So I kind of want to walk through a garden journal, how I keep one, and what I find to be the most helpful. Look at the seeds, what we're going to grow this year, what we're going to leave behind, how we're going to organize it all. We have some work ahead of us. So before we get started, I'm gonna head to the kitchen actually and make some hot chocolate because it's cold and miserable here today and we all need a little pick-me-up.
I would like to thank Maiden for sponsoring today's video. Maiden partners with the best raw material providers and multi-generational family-owned manufacturers in the US, France, UK, and Italy to build superior kitchen products. Maiden's kitchenware are used in multiple Michelin star restaurants around the world and is relied upon in over 1,500 other top-rated restaurants. They've received over 70,000 five-star reviews for good reason, but today I want to introduce you to Maiden's stainless steel collection. Use my link in the description below for 10% off your first purchase. Maiden's stainless clad are crafted in Italy and used by professional chefs in the world's best kitchens. These pans are made with 5-ply stainless steel material, which allows for superior heat retention, even heating, and ease of heat control. The handles are designed to stay cool on the stovetop, and my favorite part is that they're very lightweight. Use the link below in the description for 10% off your first purchase.
Okay, hot chocolate is on the stove. I have some very anxious children for that, but it's gonna take a couple of minutes. So while it does, I wanted to show you what my garden notebooks look like. Now, first off, I should confess that I'm not the best at taking notes, but I know that in order to be a better gardener, I really need to get better at maximizing our space and maximizing what we can grow and just doing a better job of accounting for what we've done so that things don't get missed or lost along the way. So I have a very primitive setup for how I track this. This is what I used last year and it worked really well. It's just a recycled 3-ring binder, and in it I've just printed off a very basic calendar, one for every month of the year, but it has enough space for me to write in it. So what I'm able to do is go through, grab what plants I'd like to grow this year, what vegetables I'd like to grow, write down the date in the calendar of what needs to be sown on what day, and then what day I can transplant things outside. I can also take notes then right here directly on the calendar of what I did transplant out or when I transplanted it out. So that year to year, I don't constantly have to do the work of what week do I start my broccoli and when can this go out and can this one tolerate a frost? Does this variety need extra care? So this is just kind of a really simple way for me to dial it in, keep track, and then every year I can transfer that data that I've learned and I've already put the work into the next year. So really that's all that's in here other than some blank sheets of paper so that I can take notes. If I need to remember to plant something in a particular area, maybe I want to remember to grow half the beets next year, or I need to double up on something else. I can just scribble something really fast in here so that next year I can transfer it over to next year's calendar. Then the only other thing in this whole setup is just a manila envelope that's been punched to be stuck inside here so that I cannot move it. And what this allows me to do is keep receipts for things that I buy. It also allows me to take tags off of trees or bushes or perennials and put them in here. So when I forget what kind of rosemary I've planted, or I forget what variety of apple tree just went in, all that information is in here and organized by year so that I can keep track of it. And I usually just keep these full and keep them in this like a storage tub so that I can go back and look at it. But year to year, I just kind of take it out and put a fresh one in. So that's it. Really, really simple setup. Not expensive at all, but really will save the gardener a lot of heartache. So in the garden this year, I have 5 major goals. My first goal is to stay organized. Now, I think when you first start gardening and you're so focused on just trying to do it right and trying to learn how to grow all the things and not make any mistakes that, at least for me, organization kind of went out the window because I was just so focused on growing food. But now that that's become a little bit more second nature, I don't have to work quite as hard to just sort of meet those basic requirements. Organization has kind of taken a new role. And that's because now I realize sort of this value that comes with just making sure that things are orderly so that things don't get forgotten, crops don't get left in the ground, crops don't forget to be planted. And it just sort of brings some peace of mind to me as a gardener. So I have a couple major ways that I'm working on staying organized this year. The first is continuing on with my little seed organization system that we began last year. The second is to be really good about just making sure that even a few things get scribbled down in here so that I don't have to do all that work again next year. So those are kind of my two major ways that I'm focused on staying organized, other than just making sure I don't leave my pruners in the rose bed, making sure that I have gloves to use, those basics. Now, my second major goal, like a lot of you, is productivity. Part of productivity for me means making sure that I don't overstuff my beds. Because what happens when you do that, when you plant things too close together, is that they never grow as big, they don't grow as healthy, and you're just not able to harvest as much. A lot of times things get buried. Last year, my sweet potatoes just completely devoured the beds that were next to them. I left things in the ground for longer than I should have, didn't pull them out because I didn't have anything else to put in. And so part of that we deal with through our organization and making sure that we're sowing things at the right times, that we always have something new to go in when there's something to be pulled out. But part of that productivity, it sort of seems counterintuitive, is actually to do a little bit less so that what I do grow can be as productive as possible. And that sort of leads me to my third goal, which is to keep the gardens this year really manageable. I've had some help in the gardens for the last few years, but the woman who was helping me has since moved away, which means that just Stuart and the kids and I are responsible for all the gardens around here, and that's a lot of work. That includes all the decorative beds, flower beds, herb beds that we keep around the house, and of course our huge market garden where all of our vegetables grow. So between the pruning and the weeding and the mulching, this is a ton of work. I want to stay a gardener for a really long time, and in order to do that, I have to make sure that this stays fun and enjoyable and doesn't become too big of a burden to bear for us. So my method for sort of employing this manageability is just making sure that I don't bite off more than I can chew. It seems really simple, but I've tried to keep good notes this year. Here's an example. I grew 2 full beds of beets last year. Now, we like beets, we eat beets. I love having them on hand. They store really well. I do not need 2 beds of beets. So I could easily plant something in that second bed, or even just fill it with flowers and give myself a little bit of rest in that area and still be very productive and sort of meet our vegetable needs. Okay, so we have organization, we have manageability, we have productivity. The fourth goal that I have that not all of you might share is I like my gardens to be beautiful. It's not enough for me if they just grow stuff. That's not the whole point for me. I find so much pleasure in going out and spending time in the gardens, whether it's the herb garden or the vegetable garden. They can be productive gardens, but I want them to be beautiful. And that's why you see us spending a lot of time and effort. For example, when we put the market garden in a couple years ago, we lined all the beds with rocks, and we took the time to spread mulch in all the pathways. Aesthetically, I find this very pleasing to look at. We put a ton of time and effort into garden beds that yield us nothing but beauty. It's just flowers for the pollinators and, places for the cats to play and the kids to enjoy. It's just beautiful stuff to look at. This is always going to be a goal of mine as a gardener. And so when I'm planning vegetable beds even, I need to think, what's going to make this beautiful? So this year, I'm going to integrate some more flowers actually into my market gardens. So I've designated a couple of beds strictly for flower production, to give the bees extra food. Their hives are right there, so they love to come into the garden. and aesthetically just something for us to enjoy while we're up there, especially in the heat of summer when things don't look quite as pretty. When the leaves get a little crispy and brown, it'll still give us something to look at. So beauty is always a goal. And when I'm planning my garden beds, I sort of have to work backwards. What's gonna make this productive? And also what's gonna make this piece beautiful? Now, my final goal for the gardens this year, as I set about planning, is I am pretty determined to save all of my own seeds this year from the garden. This is gonna be tricky because some of the varieties that I really love to grow are hybrids. You cannot keep seeds from hybrid vegetables because the plants won't grow true to the parent plant. So you can keep the seeds and you can grow something, but it's not gonna be like what you took it from. So the way that you counter this is growing heirloom varieties and open pollinated varieties. You can keep seeds from them and they will grow true to the parent plant. So I am having to sort of substitute in some replacements for some of my tried and true varieties and instead focus on varieties that I can collect seeds from. I realized that I was spending a lot of money every year on buying seeds, and as much as I enjoyed going through all the seed catalogs, it was a lot of information to take in, and it took up a lot of my time that I could have used elsewhere. And so I'm just kind of keeping that really simple and really easy this year, going with all heirloom varieties, everything I can keep seeds from. That way I don't have to keep track of, oh, is this the hybrid or is this the heirloom? So it makes it a little easier for me in the garden knowing I can just keep seeds from everything. And ideally, when you set up your garden like this, you don't ever have to buy seeds again. Seeds have always kind of been this great thing that you can trade amongst gardeners. You just need a couple tomato seeds or a couple cucumber seeds. And I love that part of it, that community. I'll share this variety with you, you share this variety with me. I actually made it even simpler on myself this year. I have sort of remnants that I'm gonna be making sure I use up so that nothing goes to waste this year. So there's still a lot of seeds in here that are perfectly viable that I can use for this year's garden. I also got this really great packet of all heirloom seeds, and it just covers all the bases that you could want. The cool thing about this packet of seeds is that they're less than $1, and because you can keep all the seeds, really you only need to buy them one time. A ton of these varieties that are in here I was growing anyway. So I'm gonna take some time, organize all these, put them into the right little containers to keep them safe. And hopefully it's gonna be a great year of gardening.